travel the world.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Alpha League podcast. I am Tussel. I am joined by the Pants above me, Pants999.
Howdy!
And below me we have Orion, the Alpha League main man, who is also a mysterious entity.
Yo, how's it going?
We're doing a little bit of a different setup, still getting things working. Last week was the first time. We're trying to get the chat in the screen. It is not working for me at the moment. I don't know if we have a solution for that. Yeah, that doesn't appear to be working.
Oh well, it's not overly
Can't win
important.
them all.
It's not that important. We've got chat on the side. That's absolutely fine.
What would you like to see more? A second copy of chat or our beautiful faces?
I think we just need a big one of you, Pants, right in the middle, staring at us.
Any picture of me is a big picture of me.
Larger than life. That's the term, I'm pretty sure. So today we're going to be going through the final couple of matches of Season 8. We've got the Grand Finals, which will be happening soon. In fact, they will be happening at 22:30 UTC. So in about, 4 hours time?
Something like that, yep.
Yep, you'll be watching a beautiful mirror. Glenasir versus Go Faster, Skittles versus slightly less Skittles.
I don't know if that even counts as a mirror.
Does it? I mean, this is the, one of them is a horde army, and the other one is
A horde army with some chickens.
A horde army with some chickens, exactly.
All right.
A farming
All right.
army. Once again, interestingly, we have the situation where we have a mirror match in the finals.
It's 2 seasons in a row, though. Again, the two mirrors that were in the finals are significantly different.
This is true. Last season, if you'd have been calling Imperial Guard versus Imperial Guard, you would have been savant, or people would have questioned your wisdom. But this season, Admech versus Admech, maybe a bit more predictable.
This match should hopefully be longer than the first turn roll-off.
Yes, absolutely. Fingers crossed. So, go on.
Last season's finals was predictable, but a bit disappointing.
Yeah. Well, let's see. So first things first, we're just going to do another quick reminder for Season 9. If you haven't signed up already, you have another week. Please do so. The lock date is the end of Sunday the 5th, so next Sunday. And at the moment, I believe we have about 115 out of the 160, Orion?
Yeah, give or take. I mean, we've got about 40 slots still available.
So there's still a few slots there in case you want to get involved. Plenty of room. Do come and play. Got a lot of new faces. And if you have any concerns about playing in competitive matches or what have you, just drop us a message or ask in the Discord channel. It's a great place to be.
And spread the word. Help us make sure that we do fill those slots.
Indeed. absolutely. I want to have the best tournament possible. Okay, so go on.
Brief reminder that you don't have to. You can register without putting your list in.
Yes.
And you can also put your list in if you want. It goes in that custom field. Just put a link to your paste bin. Just another reminder not to edit your paste bin. If you are free to change your list until the deadline. Just make sure you do it by submitting a new one, not changing the old one.
Unless in 2 weeks' time you want to see the pants with no hair, because he'll have torn it all out in rage and anguish.
Speaking of which, we're going to be starting check-ins on Wednesday. So as of Wednesday, you might find that you're no longer able to edit or update your list if you had a legal list already submitted. And for that point on, you're going to have to message a judge to get your list updated from that point on, assuming that it's already been checked in.
Which is absolutely fine. Do not worry about doing it.
Yep.
We live for your DMs.
Particularly about particular rules. If you have any questions about any rules, message the pants 199 directly, or 999 directly about anything. He loves it. It's what he lives for. Yeah, I myself will be waiting until the last possible second to decide my list because I'm indecisive and I can.
Can indeed. Just don't miss the deadline.
So let's, before we look forward to Season 9 and the list building stage that we're in at the minute, let's just go through the final bits and pieces of Season 8. We had the 2 semi-finals last week that we were discussing on the podcast. We went through the lists, had a look, made some predictions, made the correct predictions apart from me. I made both the wrong predictions because I went with my heart, which works in Disney films but not so much on the tabletop. We had Dryarion's sisters going down to 185 Skittles in a fairly bloody low-scoring match, interestingly, but not a huge amount to be done there. Losing the first turn roll-off hurt, and Seal against Gliniseer. Go on.
Drarion got through a lot of Skittles. I think he killed like 140 something of them.
Yeah, he did remarkably well in that match. Way punching above the weight of what I think most people would have expected from that list into the 185 Skittles.
Imagine killing 120 models and still losing.
It was the most Skittles that he'd lost in his 8 matches, but
so that's something.
Still wasn't enough.
That is something. Very impressive work from Dryarion. Deserves maybe better than he got, but what can you do? And Glenn's match against Seal, there was that first turn for the AdMech and that area denial with the infiltrators and things, raiders moving forward straight into Seal's lines, and there wasn't much that could be done from that point onwards. So we have our matchups, Gliniseer versus Go Faster in the final, both playing the AdMech, and then the Seal versus Drarion in the 3rd and 4th place. We've got Sisters versus Death Guard. So just to kind of discuss the matchup and have a little bit of predictions, what do we think is the most superior of the AdMech lists? Are we calling the Skittles? Are we calling the area denial? What do we reckon?
I think the big thing here is that every single unit in Go Faster's army is very good into Gliniseer's army. Gliniseer has a whole bunch of points tied up in chickens and infiltrators and whatnot, which are okay, but the chickens are, 400 points or so, 500 points or so of stuff that just isn't that point efficient into shooting Skittles.
Yeah, it just doesn't really do. They just don't really do what they need to do. They're there for some anti-tank, and there's not a single tank. If you're committing a Cognis las cannon into a Skitari, that is not a valuable use of your time. That's absolutely fair. Do we think that there's any redeeming factors in his flexibility that might make it swing it back the other way, the infiltrators as the raiders?
Yeah, he might be able to tie up a lot of the Skittle units first turn with the infiltrators, maybe buying him a turn or turn or two to get into position and hold the midfield. It kind of depends on the map layout and the what mission they roll. Very much so more than I think their actual like first turn roll. Well, the first turn roll is still going to be important, but their play is going to be very predictable. I think from both sides. Um, in particular, Gunster's going to have to put those infiltrators right up front, hoping to get first turn so he can get those move and charge into as much stuff as possible, just to force him to not push forward with those skittle units.
So sounds to me like it's another finals looking at that all important roll for first turn, Pants. Is that what we're saying?
I hate to say this. I think Glyn has got a solid list and he's a solid player, and I'd really like to see him take it. But Skittle Vanguards are bullshit, as as Go Faster's list says right there in the title. So my personal prediction is that the first turn roll is just going to decide whether the Vanguards win by a little or a lot.
That's a pretty legitimate statement right there, unfortunately.
That is not what I wanted to hear. I also believe that the webcams have frozen. Unless I'm mistaken.
Yes, it does appear that they have.
Which is fantastic.
What side? They have frozen with hilarious expressions all round.
This is very true. I believe you were doing your patented bullfrog.
Chat is actually working. It's just in a different corner than where we expect it to be.
That's right at the bottom. Okay, fantastic. And the color is white.
Is illegible.
Which is an issue. Let's see if we can get this going, because we'd love to hear you. We're going to do some on-screen...
well, I can see chat anyway, because I've got the stream open.
Well, having the stream up might be the problem for the cameras. This is some learning stuff. What do we need to do here? Do some color correction, get the chat in black?
Black is going to be much worse.
That's a good question.
No, but
yellow? No?
It's something we can deal with for next time.
I can read it. It looks okay to me.
Okay, fantastic.
It will cease to be okay once it scrolls up a bit. But the new stuff coming in at the bottom is always going to be fun.
Big units of infiltrators, he can do something nasty, anti-horde with T-rays. Yeah, that's very true. So,
unfortunately, I don't think he has big units. I think he's got 2 5-man units of infiltrators.
So they're more about area denial than actual damage getting into combat?
Yeah, they're very much about tying up enemy units at the start of the game so they cannot push into the midfield and move blocking his opponent.
And do we think that the those infiltrators, you'd be potentially looking at an Overwatch coming in, and then just sheer volume of fire?
It's potential for that, yeah.
I'm just going to very quickly, I do apologise chat, as I say, we're trying to experiment with things, get it going. What I will be doing very quickly is just switching the screen in and out. Streamlabs appears to have frozen with our cameras, which is very sad. And,
if in doubt, turn it off and on again.
Turn it off and on again, and you can see, or maybe you can't from the screen, if you just look at the bottom right of Pants' picture, he's got a Microsoft on his t-shirt. So that's how you know you can trust him. Okay, I'm just going to try this very quickly. And we're back. Would you look at that? Witchcraft! IT crowd coming into effect here. Fantastic.
That'll be a £60 call-out charge, please.
Oh God. Oh dear. I thought my job was bad fixing Max. That's awful. Okay. We have a comment here from McPherson. Hey mate, how's it going? Corpscari can also do well against weak infantry, but you rarely see large numbers of those. Very true, and none in the list that he's running. You have the infiltrators, you have some raiders, and then generally the kind of Skitari and las chickens that you would expect.
Yeah, unfortunately his list is built around a much more balanced idea of AdMech, and not that it was balanced because it's still pre-Codex where you can, chickens had core, but it's more of a balanced army building exercise versus what is essentially a skew list of what is the most broken unit in the AdMech army? Skittles. Yeah. What happens if I just take only Skittles?
Yeah. And we've seen, well, not for a while, but we saw at the start of 9th, I believe, some, conscript hordes and things for Imperial Guard, just relying on the fact that there wasn't enough rate of fire to deal with them, and this is that with knobs on. This is that with a unit that is also one of the most dangerous at shooting. So okay, so it sounds like we're saying that Glenn's got his work cut out for him in this matchup, which is a shame because he's one of the caster team. So obviously I'm going to be supporting him. But if he gets first turn, maybe.
Yeah, there's a chance there. I mean, some good play, some rolls not going the right way for Go Faster. It's entirely possible. It's just it would not be my expected outcome.
No money on it, Pants.
I was going to say, if anyone disagrees, I will take bets.
He's a gambling man, but he's a sensible gambling man. I will not be taking bets. Do not trust any of my predictions either. If I'm going with my heart. Okay, all right. So that's the finals. As I say, it'll be going on very shortly, 22:30 UTC. So do tune into Glynis's stream. There will be a stream announcement in the Alpha channel, and you can check in and watch him do his best to figure out how to get through that Skittle Horde. In terms of Seal versus Dryarion, we got Death Guard Sisters. Maybe a matchup that's it's definitely a bit more nuanced.
It's certainly a lot more nuanced. Sisters are traditionally quite good into Death Guard. Being able to secure those 6 damage multi-shots is something that Death Guard really doesn't like. Getting charged by Repentia in the backlines, stuff that you really are not a big fan of.
But those Repentia with the damage too maybe don't do as much as they normally would in other matchups. But Dryarion's list isn't based on the Repentia. He's gone more into Zephyrim, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Also AP3. Not something. I mean, it's almost always going to hit everything on its invul in the Death Guard list.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the other hand, you also have more than Val, and you have Celestine, so you've got some melee threats.
It's a very melee threat heavy Sisters army.
Yeah,
the list he's brought.
And we've seen Seal's tactic seems to be pushing forward with the Demon Prince. Obviously, he's got the Skull. That's something to be aware of if you're trying to get in too close with some Sisters melee units. And then you've got Panzer's favourite unit in the game, the what's his name? Fetid.
The Foul Blight Spawn.
Foul Blight Spawn fights last. It's pretty good. And turns off charge bonuses. That does a thing against Bloody Rose, does it not?
Yes, it will.
So that
for much the same reason I don't like it.
Yes. Yeah.
Foul Blight Spawn is a great unit. It's probably one of the core reasons why Death Guard is still a very competitive army at the moment. The Nurse to Mortarion, or the indirect Nurse to Mortarion, obviously hurt them a bit. But Foul Blight's one's still kind of keeping them in it. Yeah,
absolutely. You've got the range shooting with the PVCs, no loss, and then this is their answer to melee threats, which this army is. So it'll be very much about picking and choosing the charges where they come in to go on it. Go on.
I'm just trying to think, and I think it's not too far away from the truth to say that I have won all my games against Death Guard where they didn't have a Foul Blight Spawn, and lost almost all my games against Death Guard where they did.
And for those of you who don't know Pants, he is a White Scars player, so very much a melee-focused chapter and player, and that would be why. I certainly know that when I played against Seal in the group stages with my 400-point Alaris bomb, I was very upset to see the little guy there pushing up with everything, and my not being able to shoot him to death. So interesting matchup. Less reliant on the who goes first, I would say.
Less so, but I mean, who goes first is always an important roll-off, especially for any army that wants to aggressively push into the midfield. Whilst Drarian doesn't really, and he maybe wants to counterpunch a bit more, there's still the relevant factor of the Death Guard wanting to get those Poxwalkers moving early.
Yeah, absolutely, and also Dryarion has a tendency to put a lot of units up in reserves with a Zephyrim, Seraphim, etc., and Repentia being in strategic reserves for CP. Having that second turn means you can bring them down earlier if you need to and react. And then on the other hand, on the other side, we have the question of Seal's Death Shroud Terminators that he loves rodding with. A very expensive rod unit.
It is a very expensive rod unit, but it has worked out for him traditionally, so I mean, it can't be that bad of a play, because not only does it rod, it's something that you can't just laugh it off and ignore it the turn after, or just incidental fire it off the next turn after.
Yeah.
You have to commit some resources to killing a squad of 3 Death Shroud.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I would say the Sisters army is maybe a little bit more suited to screening than we saw in the previous game, Death Guard versus Death Guard, where it was a very melee-focused, bloat drone-focused army that had to push forward and therefore left gaps in the back. Ed's got an Exorcist, he's got Rhinos, he should be able to screen out his deployment zone a lot more easily, I would have thought.
And he's good at it.
Yes, that's true. He loves measuring. I've seen him. Tape measure, just big fan of that. So, should be an interesting one. How would we call it? What any kind of other interesting bits to bring up before we make our predictions?
I think I would personally say that I think Seal's got a slightly better chance just if he can get first turn, simply because of the fact of 3 Playburst Crawlers will remove a lot of those backline problems, and then he will be able to get those Death Shroud in wherever he wants to. The only time I think he's disadvantaged here is if he gets a Dawn of War deployment, and that way it's going to be a little bit spicier for him. In which case, I'd probably give it to the Sisters.
Interesting. Okay, fair enough. And Pants, what's your kind of take? Conditional, that one.
Yeah, it's a really interesting matchup. I'm very much looking forward to watching it. I think Drorian's got a number of sources of mortal wound output that is going to scare those Death Shroud if he gets a chance.
That's very true. The Flamers, there's Zephyrim in combat do mortal wounds, I think.
And he's got... Do I remember rightly? Does he have at least some Dominions?
I don't think in...
I don't believe he does.
No, he's relying entirely on his Flamers for the mortals.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other point that is interesting when it comes to considering Sisters list is I believe he's only got that one small squad of Retributors with 4 multi-melters, as opposed to the double squad you'd see in a lot of cases. So those, to the last Plagueburst Crawlers are going to be very hard to bring down.
Yeah, especially if they're shooting out properly.
Yeah, he's gonna and he's gonna have to get through everything else first. He has the rate of fire to go through the Poxwalkers and walk up to him, absolutely. But I don't know. I'm gonna back him.
His hard-hitting melee hates -1 damage. In fact, he complains about -1 damage on a regular basis.
I'm sure I've never seen it, and neither do you. So it's fine. I'll be calling it Ed's way. I just think if he can find a way to get in, and in a map that's decent for him, he is an incredibly competent Sisters player. So if there's a way, I believe he'll find it. I also think the Exorcist is a bit of an interesting, weird piece that he has.
It is. I don't think it really does much into that matchup, though.
Perhaps not, but it does also give him a pretty good to the last plan as well.
Yeah, for sure.
This is true.
Yeah. So it could be a cagey game, which is always an interesting one to watch tactically. So I'm going to say Dryarion. Orion says it's a little bit dependent on the map mission. Pants call it one way or the other. You're the gambler.
Yeah, definitely not one I'd put money on, but I think Dryarion can swing it as well.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think either player could possibly swing it. I think it just really depends on the terrain, the map, the mission. Those are going to be big factors into how well either player is going to be able to do.
KG, refusing, sitting on the fence, looking at us superiorly, saying, I know how the game works.
If I was absolutely forced to make a bet, I think my bet would actually be on Seal.
Oh, there it is. Okay, where's the Value Town love? Outrageous. Here we okay, interesting. So either way, it should be a good match. It was scheduled for the stream last week, but unfortunately they couldn't make it, and it's a little bit awkward considering the time zone differences. If it's possible to get on stream this week, we will, but no guarantees. Either way, Drarion does stream, so we'll try and persuade him to ping it up there for you guys to watch when you want. Similar to Glyn in the finals. Should be a couple of very exciting matches. Next week we are looking to, should have the answer to the question, which style of ad make is best, and we will be interviewing the champion to talk about why he took so many Skittles. Or Glyn. I hope Glyn, but we don't know. Yeah, it should be an interesting time. Do watch that final if you can. Moving on now to Season 9. Just a kind of reminder, obviously sign-ups are still open, but there's been a few changes. We've got a change to the format. No longer are we having seeded groups. They're completely random. No longer are you having the first two groups of each bracket, having two people go through and then everyone else one. It's 160 players, it's a bit bigger. The first place finish of every single group goes through to the playoff stages. And then we've also got entirely new maps and terrain done by our very own Marius Evander, the legend, the genius. And I'll be attempting this week to record some sort of maybe standalone little podcast bit for you guys where we just kind of discuss some of the map things and changes, and we'll release that on the YouTube channel as when we can. They are very cool maps. I'm sure you guys have had a look at them.
Yeah, there's a couple of them that I think have really interesting designs that I really like, and just visually they're fantastic.
They're stunning, aren't they?
I've played a couple of games on them so far, and they've been really good fun.
Excellent. And change is always good. Previous maps were fantastic as well, but the change is always nice as well. There's been quite a few changes to the rules, with Orcs, Thousand Suns, and Grey Knights all descending upon the Alpha League at the same time. Judges have been fielding questions left, right, and centre, which is what they live for. And their job, aside from the real life responsibilities that they have that we don't care about. It's the most important thing. So there have been quite a few that have gone out in the questions and answers and rulings, but do check the primer on any particular things you're looking for. And if you don't see, a question you'd like, do reach out to them. I don't know if there's anything particular to mention there, Pants.
Not rules-wise, no.
Yeah, fantastic. And the other aspect to combine maps and rules into one is the new rules when it comes to ruins, with the lip on the outside counting as you being in the within the ruin, so you can get the benefits of cover, and if they don't have a lip or a window, then there's not. We covered this last week, so do check it out if you're curious about why the maps are a bit different and how that all works.
And brief reminder, not all the ruins have obscuring, so do check before you start playing.
Absolutely. Mouse over, the keywords are there, and if they're not, then it's probably your mistake in your eyes, don't worry about it. Or it could be an error, and do raise it. Yeah, should be absolutely fantastic. So the main thing we're going to be doing today as a discussion point, meat and potatoes, is we're just going to be talking about lists. We're in the stage now where we're all looking at, well, most of us have registered, those of us who haven't should and do it, and we're thinking about what we want to play, how we want to play it, and maybe practicing, testing. Obviously Alpha League is the most important thing in your calendar. Go on.
So maybe we should insert a half hour of arguing about what we should call the season.
That might be a good idea. Maybe we do it.
Or just invite chat. Go on, chat. It's a movie.
This is a good point. I was going to say, chat, that if you have any questions, we're going to be talking through list building just from the ground up in a very general sense. It'll be a discussion. If you have any questions, do come out with them, and we'll do our best to answer them, at least with our opinions, which you can then you take on board or discard as you choose. But Yes, Pants brings up a fair thing. Season 9, season
Alpha League 9 tagline.
tagline. Do it.
Following Star Wars, I'm going for Alpha League 9: The Rise of Squigbuggy.
The rise of this. Okay, all right, and that
Not the Rise of Squigbuggy.
the rise of Squigbuggy. Just one, not 9. The rise of 9 Squig Buddies.
The concept.
The concept. Oh, I see. Right. Okay. The rise of Ramshackle. It's nice and alliterative.
I was going for that first, and then I realised that Skywalker and Squigbuggy start with the same letter, so I went for that.
See, I was going to go with something like the Daka Strikes Back.
Nice. I like that. Oh, Torrin Hart says this is his first Alpha League tournament. Well, welcome. I'm sure you're going to love it, and you're going to stomp with New Orcs. Entirely possible, and that is very much what they are designed to do. They're going to be pretty good, and at the very least, a hell of a lot of fun to play. Although if you do take 9 Squig Buggies, then, and I'm sure this means a lot to you, I personally will be slightly disappointed in you. You take that on board.
Indeed, there's our question in chat. What do we think about the 3x3 ruckers and scrap jets?
We think...
I hate it.
You only take 4. That's a weird number. You're allowed. That's absolutely...
Well, that's not that weird, because you take 3 and a Blicker 3, and you take the 1 for the Nitro Squigs.
Yeah, no, it's not that strange. That's the extra one. Although, I think...
7 is kind of the sort of, the more, like, not only normal number, but it's the number that a lot of people have been positing as, like, the perfect number. So you take 2 bricks of 3 and the 1 with a Nitro Squigs.
Well, it's the question whether you say, I'm just going to have a lot of this unit because it's fantastic, or I want to particularly buff 1, in which case you then trade those 3 for that 1 that's been buffed. But 4 is their own thing. Also bringing Gaz, okay, well that means you get a lot of respect, and I look forward to hopefully not matching with you, because that dude is scary.
Okay, so Torrin Hart, let me look on my... Okay, make a note on his application, put him in pod with Tussle.
No, go away. I've changed my mind. I'm not playing Custodes.
Clearly, following the success of the formula in Season 8, the correct thing to do when you take Orcs into Season 9 is run all boys.
Yes.
Yep, maximum size squad of boys, that's clearly the answer. Ignore those pesky little morale rolls. Don't worry about those.
This is the way.
T5 boys, just run all boys.
You have 0 boys. Have you read any books about orcs? Storm boys semi-count. I do like Alpha League 9 trophy as mine, but that's only going to be true for one person and everyone else is lying. So it's a little bit, you know. I do like the rhyme though. I feel like if we can get a rhyme in there, that's a pretty good one. That's a good way to go. All right, so let's talk a little bit about list building, because we've kind of jumped ahead to these are some of the potentially broken lists that we'll be seeing, and that does factor into the discussion. But when you're designing a list for a tournament, I think there's a few kind of core principles you should go through first. For me, at least, the first one is how, what's my play style? How do I like to play? So if I'm looking at any kind of army, I'm saying I know that I like to play in a certain way. I'm not going to tell you because I may match into you, and I want you to find out for yourself at the end of the game. But I like to play a certain way. This army, this style, this list within that can play that certain way, and I enjoy doing it. I've played with it in the past. It works. So this is what I'm going to take. And then I personally, I like to start as a start point and then kind of build out from there. Got nodding from Pants, and I'm sure Orion is as well. We can't see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's basically 2 arguments when you're first starting to build your list. If you already have prior experience, and you play multiple armies, and if you're looking at maybe branching into new army, think about... Oh, one sec. Pants, take over for a sec.
Oh, do you know the 2, Pants? I think I know one of them.
Oh, go on then.
Well, one of them's the one I said. Now you do the other one. I would say, if you're coming into a tournament for the first time and you have an army that you think is cool and you think you'll like because you want to play it, that is a fantastic place to start. If you're playing and you've got a lot of experience, you've played several different armies, then you might want to think about which is the army that I think is going to do well in this matchup or this potential meta. Again, that's a little bit later. But maybe that's something along the lines. Orcs gonna make you cry. Orcs gonna give it to you. There's a reference there. Some of you may know it. It's very niche. Or Admech gonna give it to you. Admech already gave it to you. Could be the.
Yeah, unfortunately, Admech has definitely already given to us.
Sorry. So yeah, you were saying a couple of key things.
Yeah, it's a couple of things. What armies do I already play, and how well do I know them? And am I looking to branch into a new army? If you only play, say, one army already, and you're convinced that you want to play that army, then at that point I look, okay, what kind of playstyles can this army do?
Yeah.
And which kind of playstyles, if I've tried those different playstyles, which ones do I like to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Some armies have multiple playstyles. You know, you could build a fast list with Storm Boys, and with scrap jets and what have you. You can build a more shooty list. You can build a boy heavy list. That's the Orc Codex being quite well rounded. Other armies don't have that luxury, because the book doesn't allow you, or potentially. Like my beloved Custodes, you only have a few types of models to choose from. Harlequins. You can't very well choose a I like to be tanky and push up list. So,
well, that's kind of what Harlequins do.
Tanky?
-1 to hit, 4 up invul?
I
mean, okay, it was tanky at the beginning of 9th.
Yeah, it was certainly a bit harder to kill with the -1 to wound and the aura, absolutely. And then you start an Admech list because you like long range and you suddenly become the top meta. Yes, and rolling to shoot at people when they can't shoot at you is never not satisfying.
But the corollary of this is that if the current hotness that everyone's saying, oh, this is really great, if that doesn't suit the way you like to play the game, then probably you still won't do very well with it, and you won't enjoy it. So it's really if you only play one army, then great, okay, find a way to play it that works with you. If you have a choice of armies, either because you're happy to play whatever, or because you want to match what you play in real life, but you have a bunch of armies in real life, you still need to think about how do I want to be playing this game, because you will find yourself both more successful and enjoying yourself a lot more if the way your list works matches with the way you want to be playing.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. It's a very important point. There's kind of it's hard to kind of pinpoint an exact starting point unless you have I find when I read a codex or I have a certain idea about this is a cool combo, this is a cool idea, I like this unit and I can build something around that. Unless you've got that, then you kind of have lots of different things to take in at once, and part of that is the meta part. That's the way you like to play and thinking about it. But I think, yeah, it should all tie into a core of you playing the game that you want to be playing. There's no point if you enjoy melee and the little tricks of moving in and piling in and consolidating and tagging and what have you, and you play a gun line, you won't play it as well, and you won't enjoy it as much, and that's just less buy-in. So, what if I just sign up for Alpha 4 times with 4 different factions? That seems like it'll be allowed. Well, we have a judge here who's probably going to say something about it, but I say go ahead. If you've got the time to play all of them, quadruple your chances of getting through, man.
Well, we're just going to make sure that we put all 4 of you in the same pod.
Big brain. Oh, that's hilarious. Well, then, but you see, then you get to see what's going to be the hottest one going into the playoffs. You save your matches. Okay, this is big brain stuff now. You save your matches, you wait until most people have done them, and then you just concede with the other 3 armies, and suddenly you have the top meta army going into the playoffs. Smart. I'm just... Ooh, Torin. You and me. We're gonna do this together.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a thing in the primer saying that you can only sign up once, but I'll double check that one.
There probably isn't. I don't think
but there
is.
will be now!
There might have to be.
Don't mind me, just typing for no apparent reason.
Loophole. Unfortunately, Torin, you've mentioned it on stream while we have 2 people who run this thing. That seems to be an error. But well done, for your honesty.
I mean, it would be pretty hard to spot, unfortunately, is the reality of your question. It's not like an in-person tournament where you're playing at the same time, and you can actually tell if somebody's trying to play two matches at the same time because they would have to physically be moving between tables. So it would be a lot harder to catch, but we would kindly ask you to keep one
Yeah, keep it to
submission.
one. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Gog, welcome to the podcast. How you doing? Good to see you. We're just talking about list building at the minute. Core principles: play something you enjoy and you like the playstyle of, and then kind of build it from there. So let's say hypothetically we've said, okay, I want to play orcs as an orc. I want to play orcs as an orc player, and yes, you do get to absorb the other orcs. Every kill you get comes into your war, and the list changes over time. That would be an amazing Crusade rule, by the way. I'm just saying. I don't know if anyone's played Crusade, but GW, I'm here. Hello. But you've got this core concept. You want to play a list, new Thousand Suns, for example. You want to play something with a lot of Rubric Marines because you think they're cool and they give you Cabal points and things like that. Do not do don't know 2 to 3 Fire Raptors building from there. It's an example, but don't do it because then you will be bad and you should feel bad. Um, Oh jeez. Okay, but let's say you did. Then you're looking at it and you're going, okay, so I have this core idea. How do I build around this idea? And that's where you've got to think about, at least in my perspective, what is my general game plan for this list? If I want to play a gun line and I know I like shooting and I know I like that, I say, how do I then use this playstyle to win the game that I'm playing? And one of the key mistakes I think when you're at this stage is you think, how do I kill everything? And that is not how you win in 40k, right?
Unless you're AdMech.
Unless you're AdMech. But that's because you could do it at the same time as doing the other bits, which are
Yes,
focused.
absolutely.
Incidental killing everything. Um,
Even AdMac still took bouncing birds when they could.
yeah, that's very true. That is very true. There's a question with the bouncing birds. Do you think Go Faster would have taken some in his Skittle list? Probably not. I don't know. But yeah, so you want to think about what's my playstyle, what's my general game plan? Am I pushing forward onto objectives? Am I sitting back and trying to shoot people off objectives? Am I sitting back and trying to counterattack if they come to me? Am I just YOLO straight forward into the enemy? And when you consider that game plan, you've got to think about how it builds into the primary and then also the secondaries. When you're building a list, you guys, are you mainly focused on the primary or the secondaries out of interest?
Well, for me personally, I'm trying to think of. I need to be able to control either more of the objectives or at least, you know, either the 1, 2 or the 2, 3. So I basically, all my lists, I'm thinking about how do I get 3 objectives?
Yep.
So I need multiple units that I can push forward onto objectives to hold them. From there, I'm thinking mostly about secondaries.
Yeah. So kind of not a nod, but a basic kind of this is some primary play in there. That's fine, and that would often be the same with different lists that you try. You would say this is a good primary playing bit that I have in the list, and then you're looking at the rest of it. So say you have your core concept, which is 3 Fire Raptors, and then you say, okay, well let's make sure we get some OPSEC troops in there as well because they'll be able to play the primary, and then everything else around that is, okay, and how do I make this a secondary game, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, more or less. Though 3 Fire Raptors is going to struggle in pretty much every secondary game. That doesn't just kill things.
Engage on all fronts?
Yes, I suppose.
Oh my god.
For like 1 turn or 2 turns until all the Fire Raptors get shot out the sky.
Oh my god. No one tell Glarg about the whole Storm Raven 4-up invul Sword Bearers double Storm Raven thing, because that will be the worst, and I've just done it and he's in chat. Oh god, I'm so sorry. Pants, do you have a similar list building concept yourself, or are you slightly different when you kind of building it?
I like to build primarily for flexibility and mobility, which is effectively a primary focused strategy that pulls some secondaries along with it. And it's also worth highlighting that the two ways of winning a game are scoring more than your opponent and having your opponent score less than you. So,
Not necessarily the same thing. Very true.
so I'm also a little bit focused on denial and trying to do a combination of screening and move blocking and taking taking objectives away from my opponent, even if I don't expect to hold on to them long enough to score them myself.
Yeah, and that's one of the benefits of playing a melee army, at least. We're still talking about the primary game.
Hypermobile army.
Hypermobile. He plays White Scars, absolutely. But also playing a melee playing an army with melee means that you can then flip that objective as well. So you're not just shooting something off an objective and saying, okay, cool, you'll move on to it next turn. You're putting something on an objective, in this case, almost certainly a Vanguard veteran, who then has to be dealt with a Storm Shield. And you're basically saying, I'm going to deny you this, and I'm also going to force you to deal with it before you can then move on to doing what you actually want to do, right?
But just to give a great example of why you've got to think about what it is you're trying to achieve, a great piece of advice one of my teammates recently gave me on one of my lists is he highlighted, you keep throwing out these units, intending them to be missiles where you don't care that they're then going to die. So why are you paying for storm shields on them? And he was absolutely right. I do a combination of sometimes I want to throw something out where I actually want to flip it and hold it, and where both the mobility and the durability are important. Sometimes all I want to do is mutual annihilation right there. Yeah. In which case, don't pay for durability.
All I want to do is make... No, let's not. Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. It's kind of, I would say it's the end of the list building phase when you have a list and you're playing it. So we'll get there, but it's kind of iteration and changing and toolkitting, right? You might start with something and say this plays the primary fairly well, and then discover you want to do other bits and pieces. So personally, when I'm building a list, I'm less thinking about the primary, partially because I mostly play Custodes and everything's got OBSEC anyway, so it's easy. But I'm generally thinking about secondaries.
See, that's interesting, because I have recently, up until very recently, I've been playing Death Guard sort of mech lists. And I also have traditionally been also playing a lot of Knights. I also play White Scars, but that's kind of irrelevant in this conversation. And those are both armies that generally contain little to no OBSEC. So my game has often been, okay, I will try and get as much primary as possible, but I need to figure out how to score secondaries. So it's a very sort of different style. And you can have absolutely terribly different styles. You can have those primary focused armies that you know that you're almost certainly going to be getting 10 or 15 on primary every single turn. And then you have the other style of armies where you're like, okay, well, I might only generally get 10, probably not going to get 15, and there's a turn or two where I might get 5. And I'm going to accept that with the idea that I'm going to deny them secondary options, and I'm going to get secondaries myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it depends on the ceiling. So I definitely look at secondaries. Your secondary ceiling. What kind of secondaries are you normally going for, and what kind of points do you normally expect for them? So, for example, if you're gonna go engage Rod every turn, you're gonna get max 12 on Rod, likely to get 8. I think Goonhammer had the average as 7.9, 8.9 in the recent article. I can't remember. So you're not gonna max it out by any means, but you'll get some solid points. If you're going to the last, obviously there's an inherent risk in that. If 2 of the units die, suddenly you've got 5 points. But if you can have it, that could be a 15, which is a much higher ceiling. Similar thing with engage and banners. If you're playing on a 6 objective map and you can keep your banners up, suddenly 3 banners a turn, 15 points, fantastic. Engage, you've got to move about and be in different table quarters and things, and that can be tough to play into. So as a Custodes player, defensive player, I'm often building my list 4 to the last. It's also something I should mention, I think is important when you're thinking about secondaries is this a secondary that I can score irrespective of my opponent? Someone in chat, I think it was Glyn actually, no, it was Creeper, touched on it when someone in chat asked last week, and it's you generally want secondaries that you can achieve regardless of what your opponent is doing. You do not want to hope that your opponent will design a list for Assassinate or for Bring It Down or for No Prisoners, because they likely won't, and that's something you should definitely be thinking about when you're designing a list. Am I giving up 15 points for Bring It Down with all my tanks? If so, that time I run into Las Chickens, I am in a lot of trouble. And that's something. So that's something I would think about. Your secondary ceiling with the secondaries you're expecting to play. Personally, I always look for 2 secondaries that I'm going to play almost every matchup, with 1 flex one, and then in an absolute pinch, I can play something else to replace one of those. If I'm playing to the last and I'm playing into something I know is going to kill my Telemon and whatever else it is, then I won't pick to the last. I have to pick something else. But 99% of the games I'm picking those.
I think that's pretty fair.
We have jumped ahead ever so slightly in failing to start with the fundamental point that if you get to the table and do your first thinking about secondaries, you've done it wrong.
Yes, that is.
So for those new to competitive play, probably the most important advice we can give you today is to go into every game with at least 1 and preferably 2 secondaries pretty much already selected.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, for example, the Death Guard list I've been running for quite a while. You almost every single match without fail, I was taking grind them down. That was my bread and butter. I plan to remove more of your units per turn than you are capable of removing mine. And from there, usually to the last, but on occasion not taking that just because I knew I needed to throw things in that had a chance of dying that was more likely in this scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're coming in, you're walking up to the table, and this ties into the first point, which is, this is my play style. I am playing this way. In Panzer's case, I am playing an army that plays really well with engage, can rod if it needs to, whatever, but I'm playing a mobile thing. I'm walking up to the table knowing that I have these options. I have engage as an option. I have maybe stranglehold as an option if you're talking about missiles that flip units. Stranglehold is generally a pretty good one as well, depending on the table. And so walking up and saying, I have several options that I can take. These are the ones that I want to take, but these are the ones I can take if I need to. Obviously, if you're new, relatively new, don't stress about it. It's not a problem. You know, there's some kind of key ones, and you'll kind of pick it up as you go. But just having an idea. I'm playing a fast army, I want to engage. I'm playing an army that sits back and has some alpha units that are very expensive and I don't want to die, I take to the last, etc. Treks come out. Glad you're enjoying the topic, man. Thinking about building your first Necron army, you have Catans. Catans are great. I mean, yeah, they're cool, for sure. I stuck looking at AdMech and crying in jealousy as they do everything you want better / cheaper. AdMech are very, very strong. There's nothing to get away from that. But there's ways to build Necrons to play the mission that you want to play, the way that you want to play, and that will work into a lot of different matchups. And if you spike, I think it's Sky Falling Stars with the mortal wounds around you, there's definitely some stuff you can do. And the triple Catan is a fun way to play, although you live and die by the rolling on your powers. It's my personal experience of seeing that in action. I must say I'm not a Necron specialist myself, so I can't really say more than that. I don't know if you guys have anything to add on the state of Necrons. It's not the best.
They started out pretty okay. They were somewhat comparable to Space Marines, and they were pretty good into a lot of other matchups before they got their codexes. But they have dropped off a lot harder because they lack the flexibility that Space Marines has, where Space Marines have kind of been able to adapt to the meta and kind of keep up with it to a certain degree. Necrons are not so adaptable.
They just don't have the efficiency across the different unit types, right? Sorry, Pants, you were going to say something.
What I was going to say is, I don't want to comment on Necrons as a whole. I want to comment on starting with Catans and going from there.
Yes.
Because I think it's really important to ask yourself why you want to start with Catans. Not because I'm saying you don't want to do that, but because I'm saying that if you're going to play competitively, You've got to think about, why is it that you enjoy playing with Catans? What do they do that you like doing, so that you can build an army that does that well.
Yeah.
Rather than just going with rule of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, undoubtedly cool, 100%, and the Nightbringer is my personal favorite Catan. But yeah, what are you enjoying that they do? How do you then support that, and does that tie into a game plan that you can deploy against different armies successfully? No army will have every single matchup be favorable. That's something I think also to be aware. You can design a list to do something that you want to do, but when even if you've got all the secondaries you know that you want to score and you don't care about your opponent, there's still going to be interaction. Your opponent's doing the same thing. There's still going to be interaction. You can't both do what you want to do in most cases. In some cases, you both do what you want to do, and then it's whoever scores more, and that's normally Drukhari, because they've got Herd the Prey, which is rubbish. But
Necrons also basically have Herd the Prey.
This is true. They're just not as good at getting it. But yes.
Yep.
That's very true. But yes, so you want to say, how does this, what can I do to do this kind of game plan that will work into most armies? And it won't always work. It may not work into some of the newer things, but it might work into a lot. And at the end of the day, I think if it's something you enjoy and you practice or play with, it's a style, you can compensate for that with your play. I think if you've built the list flexibly enough. So you could have someone who's got AdMech with, not all the new toys, but they've not played it before, really. They're taking it because they think it's the best thing. And if you've been practicing with your triple Catan and you know your game plan inside and out, you can even the odds in that match for sure, I would say. I'm going to assume that my co-casters are stunned with agreement and amazement at my insight. I will say, McPherson...
No, absolutely. Yeah, nothing beats practice in knowing your army, knowing what you can do, and knowing how you plan to, use your army effectively. Yeah. Especially if you're going into a match where the other person doesn't, is a huge advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. I get you on the Black Hawk Downs and wanting to build Elysian Storm Drop Troopers. Scions, my dude, Scions. Scions are awesome. They're so cool, and you can do cool things with custom regiments and Vox commands and stuff. Is it strictly competitive? I don't know. Maybe, if you play it well. And
I'm very interested to see what they do with Imperial Guard this edition, because I think they could be a lot of fun if done right.
And they've got so many options, right? If we're looking at trends for 9th edition codexes, normally you are seeing a lot less, at least in my opinion, you're seeing a lot less garbage units. A lot less units in a codex which you're just like, why would I ever take this? Than in an 8th ed one. And considering the plethora of options that Guard have, I'm sure that'll be harder. There'll be more options that aren't as good as others, but I don't know. I'm positive. I'm hopeful. And Scions are the most awesome of all the Guard. I'm sorry, it's just a fact. It's a fact. Yeah, based on what I'm saying. That's how facts work.
But as to your point that most codexes don't have anything that is, truly terrible, may I remind you that the Hellbrute still exists.
But their rage changed, didn't it?
It's still terrible.
It's slightly different now, maybe. I don't know. Who can name the most awful unit? What is it? The monolith to bring back Necrons.
That's up there. That's technically, isn't that Forge World though?
I guess. Yeah. So less incentive to design nice rules for it. All right. Okay. So let's move back to the list building side as opposed to the speculation side a little bit. So we've got.
If someone can please bring a triple Hammerfall bunker list, that would be grand.
That would be amazing. That would be very... Weren't we discussing that last season? Someone in chat, I believe, made promises but then never delivered. So yeah, okay. So let's kind of move on a little bit. We've talked a little bit about, you've got your core concept, your idea. You've got your triple Catan, your triple Fire Raptor, your triple Telemon, which is actually very good. but kind of a bit, then you've got your playstyle. Let's say you're playing with Telemons. So because I'm a Custodes player, I know quite a lot about that. McPherson's checked in, watched a few of my games. He knows that. I have my idea with these Telemons. Now I can play to the last with them and sit them back, and if I hide them, there's very little that can kill a Telemon in even a couple of turns of shooting normally, particularly if they're protected by the -1 banner, the Vexilla, and I hide them, and you have to maneuver to get them. That's a pretty easy, solid 15 onto the last. But what's that doing for my overall game plan, right? It's 900 points on Telemon that is sitting back for 15 points and not doing anything. So you probably want to push with them. Okay, I want to push with them, and then I'm building a list around that idea of pushing. How do I hold those objectives, counter charges, etc. So you've got that list. Now, we've kind of talked about it a little bit in terms of designing for the secondaries, but one of the things I just wanted to bring up briefly was Codec Secondaries. I think in any army, any codex that's come out, the secondaries have been almost the most important part of the codex, even compared to the
absolutely.
units.
Apart from maybe Death Guard, I think that's probably the case.
Yeah, because when we're talking about approaching the table, you're approaching the table with a certain game plan you have in mind, and having those extra secondaries just gives you more options when you're going into that matchup. When I approach the table as Custodes, I have maybe 4 options I can do. I can take that'll be fantastic. If I have my Codec Secondaries, suddenly I've got 4 more, 2 realistically in most books, and that just means I have more ways I can play the army. I will say I have heard the Orc Secondaries aren't fantastic. There's the one where you kill more units in melee, right? That's the Stomp 'em Good.
Yeah, that's the only one that's sort of worth considering.
See, that is a
the
shame.
other ones are fairly uninspiring.
That is a shame. See, that's very interesting as well, because
I don't know if it's a shame considering the state of Daka Jets and Squig Buggies, etc. So I'm not too concerned about the Orc Secondaries being subpar.
I say poor Orcs, give them a buff.
When I first saw them, I was expecting Green Tide to be quite popular, and I'm wondering whether it is actually not very good after all, or whether it's simply that the Orc units people want to be taking right now don't support it.
That's probably a bit of both.
Yeah, absolutely. It is interesting when GW designs a book with certain ideas in mind about how it might be played, whether that comes to pass or not. Very different thing, right? But yeah, I think it's just something interesting to bear in mind. I think it's actually
apparently they thought that they'd need to publish an entire army of renown to convince more people to play Skitarii.
Yeah, exactly. No one was taking them. Why would you? Yeah. Well, it's actually one of the big things I think. Talking about next season, we're going to see if you see Thousand Suns, I think it's one of the strengths is you've got this secondary Wrath of Magnus, where if your opponents have 1 Psyker at least, you can take it, and if you destroy more models in the psychic phase than they do, then you get 3 victory points, which is basically a free 15 against most armies, because mortal wounds is kind of what you do. And then you've also got Mutate Landscape, which is something you can do. You do a psychic action, which you can make undeniable on an objective, even if your opponent's there, and you get 3 victory points. So having secondaries...
you're fairly solidly going to get 9 on... an average of 9, I think, on Mutate Landscape.
Yeah, absolutely, and you can build for it as well. So, I don't know. I think that's one of the reasons we'll see T-Suns. We'll be keeping them up in there. But yeah. So secondary game plan, having ideas. This is how I want to play. These are the things that feed into the way I want to play, and then from there, I would say the next step is, well, how do other people play, and how is that going to stop what I want to do? If I'm playing, if I want to get into each quarter and score engage, score rod, what are people going to do to stop me with my game plan? And then how do I counteract that? If I'm going all melee and I want with Vanguard Vets and I want to be everywhere, I want to be in that quarter, and let's say I want rod as well. I want to be in the 3 quarters. If someone just puts a load of stuff there and stops me getting in, am I going to, or pushes forward to the mid board to prevent me from kind of going over them? What can I do to deal with that? Right? That would be the next stage for myself. After looking at my secondaries and the way I want to play, I would consider what I expect people to do to counter me.
Yeah, that's the kind of point where you get a really good value out of things like Vanguard bets, especially in like small little squads, because you can throw them at something, take the point back, for example, and also clear up space for your next turn to bring in extra troops to do that rod, and also score you those engage points. Those very mobile armies, they need those sort of threats where they can, throw something across the table very quickly, deal with a problem, and just sit there and gain themselves primary, secondary points.
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm designing for To the Last with my 3 plague burst crawlers like Seal, and I'm playing against, is that going to work, or is that going to be risky if there's a meta where there's las chickens with rerolls and everything? It's a question. Seal clearly didn't care. He thought the answer was, I will do it anyway. So good for him. But yeah, I think just kind of thinking about the way people play, and then what they might do to stop you is certainly one thing. If your army's designed for Stranglehold, think, what if I come up against an army like 185 Skittles? Don't plan for skew. That's not a thing. That's not good advice. Definitely don't do that. But do
Not that level of skew, but it is worth thinking, what would I do against everyone's Obsec Necrons?
Yes.
Yeah. Or, for example, or what do I do versus knights apart from laugh at your poor opponent?
Yeah, exactly. And then being able to flex on the game plan, right? Oh my god, there's knights. Okay, I don't have the ability to kill these knights. Alright, so we're playing a primary game, and I don't care if I get tabled. Which is the way to deal with knights, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you can do really well with knights. If they don't bring enough stuff to kill your knights, it feels really good until you realize, I'm not actually scoring any points.
And points win prizes. And 40k. It's an old Brucey reference there for anyone who's... Yeah. So... That and it's this stage where I think you can fall into maybe a potential trap. I don't know if it's a trap of designing too far against the meta. So this is something that I can speak personally to. In this Alpha League season, I looked at AdMech, and I played in the Tactical Tortoise Invitational against, I think it was Devin, and I just could not kill his Skitari. He had Dune Buggy, what's his called? Dune Rider? Strider? Dune Crawler with some priests in it. He had some las chickens. It wasn't a skew list, but he solar you want to say something? He solar flared something onto an objective near me in the game with all the buffs, and I just could not kill it. And then I looked into, the coming Alpha League, and I said, well, I want to be able to kill that Skitari unit if I need to. I want to be able to do different things. And also, there's a Drukhari matchup to bear in mind. So I'm going to take a lot of damage to weaponry that can do different things. I thought I designed essentially the entire list to tech into it. I brought an Alaris bomb so that I could bring something down, snipe that character that's being a pain in the ass with stratagem, and then turn off Overwatch, charge in, hack them to pieces. Most units in my army were designed for AdMech and then various different things. What I failed to think about was... oh, thanks, Pants, that's what it is, makes sense. What I failed to think about was Death Guard, where damage to weaponry is the worst thing in the world, and New Orcs it would be the same situation. And so I fell into the trap of designing my whole list with this one idea, I'll counter the top metas, etc., and therefore was completely flawed by going into this Death Guard list that I just couldn't beat.
Yeah, you can skew your own list too hard in the wrong direction as well.
So it's kind of a question, I guess, how if you're starting with 3 Fire Raptors, you are a skew list. That is absolutely fine. And if your skew is, I say fine, you're a terrible person. But if your skew works into lots of different things, then that's fantastic. The other style, you may or may not know, TAC, take all comers, is the other side of that. And I think generally you want to be somewhere in between, I would say, where you have maybe if you start with a take all comers core and then you have a few elements that deal with what you might perceive to be the meta, and this is where we're talking about toolkitting and teching, right? So let's say for example, Pants, we're expecting some T-Suns and Grey Knights, I would say, in the next Alpha League. Are you thinking that you might have to tech your current White Scars list?
Actually, wrong example for me. I looked out there and thought, right, what am I going to struggle with my current list?
Of
I'm
course,
going to struggle
orcs.
with orcs.
Yes.
So because the core of my shooting in the last Alpha season was Strength 6, Damage 2, then in preparation for facing a bunch of buggies, I've swapped some of it for Strength 8 shooting in order to dodge ramshackle, but not to the extent that I've now got a massive problem if I find myself back up against Drakari with their raiders instead.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've seen a potential issue for the core of your list, and you said, what's something that I can maybe sacrifice in order to be able to deal with this? Also, hi Loop, 4 times. Loop 4 times? Because you got 4. Okay, nice. Welcome to the channel.
No, there's only 3 O's.
Is there? Oh. Well, in that case, what are you doing, man? You should be looped 3 times. What's going on? Madness. Orion, can you think of something that you're anticipating? And we haven't really talked about the impact of the new books, but I'm sure they'll have a big impact. What's something that you're thinking about your list that you're thinking, okay, well maybe this won't work and I'll have to tech to deal with this?
Well, specifically, I'm actually going to probably be playing one of the new armies, and I have been thinking also about the orcs matchup, which is why I've been considering teching in a Helldrake, because that Strength 8 shooting with damage 2 is pretty good into the buggies and whatnot, and the Helldrake's claws are fantastic into Dakajets.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
flat 4 damage, right?
Flat 4 damage into the Dakajets. So that is sort of my tech piece against orcs currently. Obviously, mortal wounds are good versus pretty much everything in the game. There's not really much that mortal wounds don't do well into.
Yep.
But yeah, the little tech pieces like that, they can make a big difference. The other thing I'm considering falling back because I'm still not convinced myself to play Thousand Suns yet is White Scars, which, again, you can't really go too far wrong with a bunch of Volkite Contemptors and Vanguard Veterans.
Advancing and doing whatever they want, wherever they want. Disgusting behavior. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, so clearly they're the orcs. So this is the interesting question. Do we think that people will be more interested in teching against orcs than against the new onslaught of psychers?
Well, short of playing Sisters, there's not necessarily that much you can do.
I guess that's true. Sisters obviously.
Or Grey Knights.
Sisters with their auto deny. I will say it's interesting. There was a period of time near the start, earlier in 9th, where you'd see Custodes list taking an Inquisitor for that denial and potentially a Psychic Secondary, or if you're taking Kyria Draxus for that targeted smite. But you don't really want to do that to give up Wrath of Magnus into T-Suns. So you might be seeing the Calexis Assassin as something very cool. Or if you're Custodes, you see the Sisters of Silence, which I've ordered 10 of them on Friday for the LGT because I think they will be useful. But yeah, I also want to say, like, I think when you're doing these tech things, it's very important to look at a unit and say, can this unit have multiple functions? Sorry, it's something actually I just thinking about. Maybe you should have mentioned earlier. Can this unit have multiple functions? Is this unit going to just be a denial? The problem with taking something like a Calexis is, if you are playing into a non-psychic army, what is it doing? It's 100 points. Is it going to achieve much? And that's something to bear in mind. Last thing you want to do is take a piece. So something like a Helldrake, you could still use, do you think, effectively into a matchup without any flyers?
Yeah, absolutely. It's still a fairly effective piece. It's good for move blocking, and it's good for just being an annoyance in an opponent's backfield.
Engage on all fronts.
if engaged on all fronts, for example, so it can score you some points, and it can be annoying. It's obviously not as great as when you're able to use it into its like perfect situation, but not always are you gonna have a perfect situation.
Yeah, so it's kind of one of those things where you're thinking, you start off with a concept. This Helldrake, is that a good tech piece? That's a way to deal with flying things. I see Dakka jets in my imminent future. If I take this, will I do it? And then you workshopping that idea. Well, what else will it be? It'll be good into Raiders, for example.
It's good into Raiders.
Still,
It's good into Vanguard vets with the stratagem for 3 flat mortals.
yeah,
Um, it's good into quite a lot of things. The main thing that lets it down is its relatively limited amount of shooting and its relatively squishy profile.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of one of these things where you're playing, where you're playing with it and understanding the limits of what it can and can't do comes in vital. Um, Diamond, hey, they're good at controlling the board and can be pretty good anti-infantry. Yeah, absolutely. They control the board with the forward deploy, and they're pretty great anti-infantry as well. They can move block, they can get you engaged, and I believe because they're Sicarians, can you pick them up as well as the Rustalkers, right? Um,
I can't remember what the keywords for
Someone
that
in chat,
stratagem.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I know you can do it with Rustalkers. I'm pretty sure you can do it with Infiltrators as well, which is if they are near the board edge, you can pay a CP to chuck them up and then bring them down. So for Rod late in the game or something like that, they're absolutely fantastic. Yes, they can. Yeah, I thought so. So when I played a Custodes Admech Soup, I brought a unit of Rustalkers for very much that thing. They screened out at the back in some games, and then I pick them up and chuck them over there, and there's a rod that you can't do anything about on turn 4 or 5 because there's barely any units in the game. So absolutely, Infiltrators are a fantastic item. It's kind of a jack of all trades unit, does a lot of different things, and it's fantastic
It
to
isn't
have
very
those units.
expensive.
Yeah,
It's only for what five? They're only what like 25 points a model or something. 20, even less than that maybe.
yeah. Another very easy example, seeing as we're saying Infiltrators. Um, I mean, we're talking
Yeah,
about the
Primaris
Sicarian ones.
infiltrators.
Exactly. I was just thinking that Primaris Infiltrators with their OBSEC, their Deep Strike bubble of denial within 12 inches. I
Yeah,
would
that's very powerful.
I would say if you're taking some Primaris troops, it's almost always, not always, but and I'm not the Marine player here. You guys are, but I would say it's often or almost always a good idea to upgrade one of them to the Infiltrators just so you have that option in case you need it. There's a lot of
Yeah,
things coming
I'm
up in the game.
personally a big fan of bringing a unit of infiltrators and 2 units of incursors.
Yeah, just give you that forward deploy.
Forward deploy if I want it, and deep strike denial on the back. And then if you don't need the forward deployment, then incursors are still pretty good in general, just because of their combat knives are on -1 AP natively, and for example in White Scars on turn 3 that goes up to damage 2 AP 2, which is pretty good.
It's insane. It's with a +1 to wound with Corsair Khan, you're basically talking about Grey Knight halberds at that point. That
Yeah,
is
pretty much.
bonkers.
Meanwhile, Grey Knights just get this on their basic troops choice for a 1 point extra on top of these incursors.
Yeah, it's a whole point. You get it for free on turn 3 if you have a character nearby. Oh wait. Oh yeah. Okay. Very good point. I think the final thing, the final bit to kind of go into when, let's say you've got this list, you've got this core, you've built around it, you plan for some secondaries, you thought what might be coming up, and thought maybe I'll tech in this piece or that piece here or there, is then just play with the list. Play it once, play it twice, play a couple of times, just get a feel for it. I would say is important. I don't know. Do you guys normally test a list before taking it somewhere?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, I would say play it like maybe 1 game, 2 games, and then think about what has and has not worked. Think if it was a tactical mistake or think if it was a list building mistake.
Yeah,
And if it was a list building mistake, or not necessarily a mistake, but like if you think there was maybe something that you could do better with those points, figure out what that is. Like a perfect example, I was playing against Pants yesterday, and whilst I made some fairly horrendous tactical mistakes that definitely cost me that game, um, there was a unit in there that I felt, and was rightly so, felt was not really contributing much, and so I swapped it out.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've looked at it, and this is key. If you are playing, iterating a list is a good idea. Coming up with new things. But if you are playing, it's very important to look back. I personally always love to have a post-analysis chat with my opponent. Most people are normally up for that. We had to drag Pants away from his game earlier, so he couldn't. Sorry about that, mate. But it's very important to have that to see what were the pivotal bits that changed, and was it a tactical thing, or was it because I didn't have any options because I did not have a unit that could deal with that situation. And if it's a tactical thing, then it might be something you can change in the way you play. The last thing, well, not the last thing, but one thing to be wary of is a bit like the land flood situation in Magic the Gathering. If you are flooded with lands in your deck, for those of you who don't know, you got the cards and you got the lands to cast them. If you're flooded with lands, you're overwrought, you don't have your things. There's a big temptation to go, right, I'm going to change my deck so I have less lands in it, and then the next game you're not going to get it. It's a kind of a confirmation bias. So you may say, well, this piece didn't work this game, or I did a mistake with this thing. Well, get rid of it. It's terrible. But it's very important to try and find that distinction between the two, right?
And that may take multiple games, so
yeah.
Try. Only you know how much time you can invest into this, but where possible, try not to make enormous changes between games. The smaller the tweak you make each time, the more comparable your results are. So it makes it so much easier to tell the difference between that change being relevant or it being something else in the game, the opponent, the dice, whatever, and maybe actually you didn't need to change something after all.
Basic scientific method, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the less variables you change, the more accurate your determination is going to be.
And this is a very good point by Trek. Absolutely, it's not just necessarily tactical versus this unit wasn't good. That's the caveat. This unit wasn't good in this matchup. Absolutely, 100%. And that kind of also ties into... It all ties in together, and that's the thing. It's really hard to say. There's no kind of set, go through it this way, because everything kind of loops back and talks to itself. And that's why it's so interesting, and we love building lists, and I'm sure my co-casters have built hundreds of lists in their days. I still have my Heroic Challenge Space Wolf list, which is one of my favourite ones, but it's never won a game, but it will one day. Some lists... Those units are not going to be effective. Perfect example of this is the AdMech final. You have Glyn's list, which has some Las Chickens in it. Are they a bad unit because they're bad in the matchup? What do you reckon? No, I don't think so. I think they're a pretty good unit. So yeah,
that's a pretty hard thing to say that chickens are a bad unit. But yes, in this upcoming match, chickens are not going to be the ideal unit he wants.
And this is where I feel that having that chat with your opponent, or having a chat with anyone in the community, the alpha chat is always open for people talking, wanting to talk or discuss their lists or what have you. Having that, this unit didn't work. Did you have a problem with it? Did you have did you think it just wasn't good, or did you think it was an issue and I didn't know about it, etc. You learn so much by playing and by chatting with people about the way you played. That's the best thing to do, and then you can kind of take that back to the drawing board and not to the drawing board. That's important. Take it back and tweak little bits and pieces. I played yesterday with my T-Sons against Space Wolves, and he said these were the things that I was aiming for, and actually these other things did a lot more than I expected, and I can then use that information to feed into what I'm doing, which is unleashing unholy mortal wound death into a bunch of space puppies, because Magnus did nothing wrong. So yeah, it's playtesting, it's checking, when you've played, thinking about it, and just tinkering with the bits and pieces, and then coming up with something. But I think the most important, there's two incredibly important things to bear in mind with all of this. Number one is, if you want to play a list and you want to have fun, you will do that even if you don't go through all this. You don't necessarily need to have this massive kind of process and malarkey to play in a tournament. If you're looking for the top tables, you want to start thinking about this, but just to play, the key thing, as we said at the start, is play something that you enjoy in a way you enjoy it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, this is more if you're trying to learn how to play competitively better, or list build in a competitive fashion better.
Absolutely.
It's not necessarily about, how to play in a competitive environment. So that's a completely different thing. Because you can play in a competitive environment with a casual list and just do just fine. You'll have a fun time. If you come up against somebody who has practiced their list really well and has really done their research and has really figured out the optimum way of playing the way they want to play the game, is the other person probably going to win? Yes. But doesn't mean you can't have a fun game.
Kind of a fun game. Can't enjoy it. And can't do an upset. You never know. It's a dice game, and you could be a super genius. I know I am. Maybe. TM. But not really. Final thing I would say is get good. That's
Yeah, I mean, that's really the end result of all this.
And you might think I'm saying that to you as a person or in general. I'm not, don't worry. I'm saying it to Pants specifically. You up there, get good. Go on, do it.
I'll try.
That's an
Well,
interesting.
Don't say that to him because he beat me yesterday. What does that mean for me?
Get even gooder.
Yeah, apparently.
Pretty sure that's English. Diamond actually makes a very good point. And we're going to be kind of wrapping things up a little bit here. But if you have any guys, if you have any questions in chat about, list building, the process we've talked about, what you think about the meta, anything you kind of want to ask that you want our opinions on that you might value for whatever reason, insanity, I won't rule it out, then please do let us know. But that's a very good point by Diamond, which is some people use a unit better than others, absolutely, and that's partially playing, but that's also partially style. You'll see one person who has thought of more ways that they can use a unit than others. It's very simple to take a unit of Vanguard veterans and just fling them into an enemy, but you might be thinking, but the next person might move them over here to do this thing, achieving two things at once, move over there, pile in, consolidate, tag, etc. And that comes from playing and practicing, I would say.
I'm going to throw in two random things.
Yeah, go for it.
The first one is actually quite fundamental, not all that random. We talked earlier about a lot of the different roles that units might have in a list, and there are so many things that different units might be in your list. It's hard to enumerate all of them, but you should nonetheless try to think through all of the things that you might want a unit to do in the game. And for each of them, you should be able to either identify a unit that is in your list to do that thing, or satisfy yourself that the game plan is okay without that thing being done.
That is a very good point. I will just very quickly switch the... we've lost cameras again, so I'll just... like it did last time. And it hasn't. Well done, Streamlabs. Excellent. Fantastic. Well played. Anyway, yes, it's a very good point. There are certain things that need to be done.
So, for example, there are land speeder storms in my list because earlier on I looked at my list and realised what I don't have is a way of scoring engage early in the first turn with units I don't mind losing. So I needed to change my list. That was a problem I was not willing to accept. That's a shortcoming I was not willing to live with. So I had to change my list so that I had units that could achieve that. At the same time, I also have nothing that will sit in the middle of an exposed board and definitely survive a turn. And that is a shortcoming I am happy to live with. But it's very because I have a game plan that doesn't require me to do that. But it's important to think through all these things that you might need to do and either go, yes, that's what that thing is in the list for, or go, I'm happy not to have anything that can do that.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And there's a few things you can kind of tick off. So if you, and this kind of builds into experienced playtesting, if you play something and you play an army and you realise that actually someone just deep struck behind me and it was a big problem. They deep struck a load of Zephyrim, which then made a Miracle Dice charge. You may think, I needed to screen, but I don't have a unit that can screen. take that on board, think about it, maybe write it down and think, okay, I might need a screen. How does that work? Same thing with mortal wounds. You know, what is the tool that I can use, and what situations is it useful in, and do I have that in my list? So, you know, writing things down is always fine. I like to make Google Keep notes, you know, and say, okay, do I have a screen in this list? Yes or no. Do I need one? Yes or no. Normally with a screen, the answer is yes, to be honest. One of my favourite things is tiny little units that can go out and put their foot on objectives and just be annoying, and because it forces a reaction. Cyberwolves are cool.
My second one is much more specific. And a bit noddy, but might help some people. Just a reminder on To the Last in particular, that if you look at your list, you identify the 3 To the Last targets, and you go, well, they're not good To the Last targets, so To the Last is not going to be part of my game plan. That is not the end of the thought process. You should also be looking to go, well, what could be the To the Last targets if I made little tweaks. A fantastic example of this was in John Lennon's Dark Angels lists, where he used to run units of 3 attack bikes with 2 multi-melters and 1 heavy bolter.
Yes.
Not because 1 heavy bolter was exactly what he wanted, but because that kept the price 5 points below a Talon Master, thereby allowing Talon Masters, which can be Lookout Sir protected, to be his To the Last targets.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure, 100%. And some Sisters players doing the same thing by not taking all multi-melters, so that then you can get Celestine and your whatever as To the Last, I believe. And I've managed to fix the cameras by toggling the visibility on and off, so that's cool. Today we learned. What are things? Oh, hey Chris, you're right, mate. To the Last actions. To the Last is generally a good secondary if you can build towards it. Often you can't, if you're playing an army that's kind of hoardy or what have you, because To the Last you often want to have characters, because they're harder to get to and die, if you can. Whereas, you know, your big, since they changed it from model to unit,
yeah,
exactly, it's a big problem. So you do not want your big brick of Necron warriors being your To the Last target, because they have to go forward and they're going to be shot at from everywhere. So things to keep in mind, Trek. Screening is absolutely one. Holding the center is, I would say, if you can, it's great. It is tactically, it's fantastic. It gives you more ability to reach around the map, but some armies don't play to it, so that's a bit more dependent on your playstyle, I'd say, and I think that's one of the reasons why Pants could more reasonably drop it than the other ones. Engage is a secondary. Generally speaking, fast units are, again, broad brush here, and it all depends on your playstyle, it's all conditional, but generally speaking, fast units are useful for getting places, doing things. At the end of the game, the difference between 10 on the primary or a 15 on the primary if you're going second could literally be the difference between having a quick unit that can just zing across the board, is hiding in your deployment zone, zing across the board and go hold an objective and get you that 15. So fast units are good, because they can do that, they can do engage, they can potentially rod, what have you. Anti-horde, anti-tank. Now we're talking more kind of killing. Generally speaking, yes, you want to have a bit of both. You want to think, is there a damage profile I can't deal with, and as such I need to do something? That's more about, I would say, list design as a whole than
on the core,
than tech. Although having said that, if you're expecting a lot of something, then you want to know how you can deal with it. So that's fair. If you're expecting, like, you know, Orion, he's getting the Helldrake to counter flyers, for example. In terms of general tactical things, I would say something that can hold your backfield for cheap if you're gonna screen is a fantastic thing to have. I always used to, when I was souping in Scions, take a unit of Servitors. They're 28 points. They'll sit on my backfield, and as long as there's no artillery, they'll just sit there all game and do nothing. Similarly, that cheap unit, if you can have it, can also just push forward with an early advance. If you get first turn and you want Stranglehold, push forward onto an objective, get you 3 points, and then if they die, I don't care. My Chaos Spawn for the Thousand Suns, he's 23 points. He's got a 7-inch move. I just have to roll a 2 on my advance to get onto an objective in the midboard. Fantastic. Great.
If you ever want banners to be a good secondary, you have to think about who's going to raise your banners in your backfield objectives, who's going to get out to the midfield objectives turn 1 and still be able to raise banners there.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is not my Chaos Spawn. He's got too many arms. He can't hold on to. But sorry, that was probably a disgusting sound. Do apologise. But
Other things that a unit can be in the list to do are things like get cheeky turn 1 charges off on the enemy to tie up something there. Pre-game move in order to block some badly placed enemies into their deployment zone early on, even if it's then going to die.
Pre-game move and forward deploy, I would put into two things. Board control is a big thing, and this is, I would say, if you're planning on being out on the map somewhere, then board control and being able to control an area by either controlling where your opponent goes in terms of boxing in with movements and charges and what have you is fantastic. But also, I personally like board control in the area that I'm in. So when I take a Telemon, you do not want to go near him. Because he will punch you in the face with a damage 4 fist and shoot you to death. So what's my board control element if that's what the style I'm playing? Sorry, I kind of jumped in there, but I feel like it's relevant.
Yeah, and also considering redeploys in there as well. Some always have a great ability to pick up their units and put them in other places, but very little interaction from the other player.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've got an army that can redeploy, and there's a way to get it in, there's tactical possibilities. Some of these are, it's a bit like Moscow. Some of these are must-haves. You must have screening, really, if you're playing into any psychers or what have you. If I'm playing a Custodes list and I'm just advancing 5 shield guard up towards T-Suns, I'm going to have a very, very bad time, because they are all going to die and there's nothing I can do about it. Unless I roll a million 6s against mortal wounds, but it's not very likely. Some of them are just a more tactical, but yeah, I would say small units for holding objectives and raising banners, screening for sure. I personally don't like leaving home without at least one unit which I can drop in if I need to, or redeploy somewhere, because it just opens up. Again, it's all about how many options do I have in any given situation in the game. And if the answer is
Also,
one option, it's very easy to play against you.
Also, the one of the very valuable parts of having redeploys or having deep strikes, etc., is it forces your opponent to have to commit units to screening.
Absolutely.
Screening their backfields in particular, which sometimes they don't have good units or good cheap units to be doing that with.
Yeah.
Custodes is a perfect example. They don't really usually have a lot of good cheap units that they want to put in the backfield to stop you from going there.
Yeah, absolutely. 153 point Custodes unit with shields or whatever stringing out to deny some victory points is not ideal. It's not efficient, and it's really a problem, definitely, for sure. And also, you can. It kind of ties into how do I make the opponent do things that they maybe don't want to do with their game plan. We saw it against Seal with the Death Shroud coming down. Minimoogs had to move forward because that's the way the game played. If he didn't move forward and he screened the backfield, he would lose. So he had to just accept that the Death Shroud were coming down, and that's not where he wanted to be. But he had to make a tough choice. If he could have screened, but then that would also have been a bad choice. If you can give your opponent nothing but bad choices, you're in a fantastic spot. Sacrosanct is not a thing that you need to do, Chris. But they are good, and I'm glad you're enjoying them recently.
I'm not. It means there's another Sisters player out there.
There's too many of them.
Don't need all these 5-up denies everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you 100%. Go away. Oh, if you balance your Retribution squad, yeah, absolutely. You can get the Sacrosancts as your while we stand we fight. Yeah, fair play. And they're hard to kill, 4-up in bowl, and hiding behind things and stuff. Cool. All right, did not know that. See, there's some list building tech, and that's one of the reasons why we love this game. There's so many different things you can do and tweak to change something. You know, you might think that just changing one weapon on one model in a unit might not do anything, but it could have major implications. It's fascinating. Yeah, I don't know if we've got any other questions or any other points to bring up from you guys. Doesn't sound like it. I'm very quickly going to ask the Spirit of the Faithful. Is that what they call you? Or is that what you call yourself? I don't want to know. I'm going to ask.
That's his name for his. No, I'm not going.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Spirit of the Faithful. Ah, that's well. At least it's kind of vaguely nice, I guess. It's not Spirit of the Unfaithful, which is anyway. So, here's a very quick question before we go. Of the new codexes, I'm pretty sure I know your answer, but in terms of, so next week we're going to look at some of the submissions. We're not going to look at lists exactly, so do not worry about submitting your list, but we're going to look at maybe at some of the ideas and what we're seeing, some of the trends. Do you expect to see more Orcs, Grey Knights, or T-Suns lists? What do you think?
I think we'll see the least Grey Knights lists. I think we will see quite a lot of Thousand Suns lists, and I think we will see a lot of Orcs lists. I'm honestly not sure what we'll see more of. I think Orcs are the stronger faction, but I think people who like Psychers have been pining for a good Psychic faction, and I think they will all be jumping on Thousand Suns.
Because they're a lot of fun to play. I can attest that myself. What do you reckon, Pants? Similar? Bright? Same thoughts?
I think that everyone will think that there's going to be lots of orcs, so everyone is going to tack against orcs, so you shouldn't take orcs.
And he's using the opportunity to push his own agenda. That's a very good question, Trek. So the way it works is, I believe you have, 3 or 4 weeks for the first phase, the group stage? We're in?
Yeah, it's 4 weeks for the first stage. You have 4 weeks to play 4 matches. After that, if you get into the playoffs, you will have approximately 3 weeks if you make it until the end of the playoffs.
Generally playing one game every 3 days or so, if possible, just to speed it
Yeah,
along.
every 3 to 5 days.
Yeah.
So for 80% of people, it's 4 weeks of playing a match a week and 4 weeks of waiting.
Yes.
Yeah, give or take, yeah.
And then getting bored and pretending that you can cast and joining a podcast. What? Yeah. All right, we'll do better next season, lads. It'll be fine. Actually, Pants got into the playoffs, so well done him.
Yeah, I didn't actually play last season, but I will definitely be playing this season.
Oh, so just me then. Oh, well. Excellent. I'll just raise that one up and then slap myself in the face with it. Wonderful. Well played. Okay, well, if that's all we've got there, I think it's maybe time to wrap things up a little bit. Orion, do you want to say thank you to our sponsors?
Yeah, just a usual thank you to Wayland Tiny Games, our Inc., who have been sponsoring us for the last season and are going to be continuing to sponsor us for next season. They are the guy who runs it's also one of the designers for numerous tournament map layouts, not to mention the WTC World Team Championship. He is a very good guy and very good at making map design and very knowledgeable about the game in general, and produces great terrain, especially for your home boards, because it can always be like packed up and packed away, very lightweight. So if you don't have a huge amount of space for like big, huge, resin or plastic pieces of terrain, being able to fold them all up and just slip them onto a shelf,
fantastic,
pretty handy.
Yeah. Incredibly. Storage. Yeah, so thanks to those guys. I'm going to say thank you to both of you. I'm going to start by saying thank you to Pants for joining us. Alpha League judge and all-round top chap. If you have any questions about any of the rules in the Alpha League, you heard him earlier in the chat. DM him directly. Yep.
Yeah, it's the pants 999 hashtag, and I'm not going to do that to you.
At hotmail.com, I think. Something. I don't know.
It was once upon a time.
Oh, so that's an active mailbox. He won't answer it, but if you want to rant, go ahead.
I think they've purged since then.
All right, okay. So thank you to the Pants, and thank you very much to Orion for joining us, the main man, Alpha Commandant. Thanks for joining me as always. We've done it twice, but technically as always, it counts.
So far,
exactly. Next week we'll be looking at some of those trends and lists, and hopefully we'll have an interview with the Season 8 champion, whoever that may be, and asking if they're going to repent and no longer play AdMech the next season, which I hope the answer will be yes. So
I think the answer will be doubtful. I'm pretty sure they'll continue bringing AdMech.
Okay, crowdfunding required, I think, and a bit of a bribery. Here we go. There's solutions. We'll find a way. It's fine. So thank you everyone for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and it's been vaguely useful in either getting you hyped for the Alpha League, or maybe helped you a little bit when it comes to designing your list or thinking about what you're going to submit. Cheers, Trek. Glad you enjoyed it.
I just also want to point out the latest registration is someone who I can wholeheartedly agree with, because their name is Magnus Was Right.
Well done. If you're watching, well done for signing up, and well done for knowing correctly what happened on Prospero. They were prospering, and then some wolves came and ruined it. So we'll be on the same time next week, talking about that. Hope to see you then. Thanks for joining us, and good night, everyone. Sorry about
Bye, everybody.
Sorry about the loud noise right now. I do apologize.